What's up, guys? Welcome back to Archangel Ministries. It's your boy Jason. Alright, today's video we're going to cover some tactical stuff, knives and things like that, what I use personally. But before we go into that tangent, I want to stress the importance of you guys learning this stuff now. Alright? Look, I'm not going to lie. I was going to go and do a very elaborate video on the multiple different types of weapons that I have. Swords, knives, daggers, machetes, tomahawks, the whole deal. However, the pressing issues that we're facing in America right now, I'm not going to cover all of them. I'm going to cover a handful, and it's going to be the ones that I use on a regular basis. I'm going to show them to you. I'm going to tell you the reason why I use them, the type of training I've had with them, and I'm going to give you the reasons why they are tactically sound. All right? Because, like it or not, we're in a spot in America now that this stuff is necessary. This has to be discussed at this point. You have to learn this. If you are a man and you have a family to look after, I don't care if it's surrogate, I don't care if it's blood, I don't care if it's by marriage, you have a responsibility to protect them. You do. Don't give me that pacifistic, Christ was a pacifist nonsense. He told his disciples to buy a sword, and it wasn't for buttering bread. Alright? Now, having said that, I will elaborate a little bit on what's going on according to my sources, very briefly, and then we will get straight into the subject for today's video. We have been seeing tyranny rushed, not just across the world, but across our nation. I live here in the Bible Belt, and I can't tell you how many churches and pastors have come forward just over the last couple weeks about the cops harassing them for holding parking lot services where everybody is in their cars, not violating anybody's territory. They're not in danger of spreading any kind of disease or infection, yet the cops are showing up, harassing them, threatening arrest, and giving the people wanting to hear the gospel $500 tickets. This just happened in Mississippi. That's not even covering Florida or Louisiana or here in Tennessee or anywhere else in the nation right now. Alright? And that's just one example. We've also seen surfers who have decided to do kayaking and stuff like that, paddleboarding is the proper term for it, getting harassed by law enforcement in LA. And we've got cases popping up all across America, and there's several that are not getting reported on that my people are telling me about, of them actually full-on arresting people. Now tell me, what's the point in you letting all the violent criminals and pedophiles and rapists and stuff out of prison if you're just, due to the COVID-19 virus, if you're just going to repopulate it with innocent civilians? That's called tyranny. And you know what? Any law enforcement officer out there that's doing that, you make me sick. I work in executive protection. I work in private security. I do the job that you guys can't be there to do. When a mugging or a robbery takes place at my site, I'm the first responder, not you. Alright? So you guys that refuse to uphold the Constitution, uphold the people's rights, you need to go back and take a look at the oath you swore before you put on that badge. Because you're acting just like the Stasi. Just like the brown shirts over in Germany. That's exactly what you're doing. You're playing off people's fears and coinciding with a government that's wanting to shove tyranny in people's faces. And you know what? It makes me sick. It really does. So people having said that and seeing what's going on, I hate to break it to you. This stuff is absolutely necessary. You have a responsibility not only to protect yourself, protect your family, but some of y'all may even be called like me and eventually be called on to protect God's people. It is what it is. I've watched this country slip for years now, falling into the abyss. God has shown me multiple times through dreams and visions of the judgment that was coming on this nation. And it pains me to acknowledge it, to see it for what it is right now. But make no mistake, we're facing a time. This is going to be necessary. and there's a lot of you out there that have just recently bought them. More power to you. Welcome to the club. Get good training. I am going to do some videos for you guys, but it's not going to be right off the bat, all right? I've got stuff in the works, and I've got stuff coming. You got to be a little patient with me, because the new contracts and stuff that we're working on top of the ministry and everything, all kinds of stuff going on. All right. Now, as far as today's video goes, we are going to talk about knives. We're going to talk about blades. I was going to do a longer, more extravagant type video where I go through the majority of my personal collection and tell you why I have these, what they're used for, the appropriate uses for them, and whether or not they're tactically mindful, useful. However, due to time and other variables that have been brought about, I'm going to go through my personal list, what I use personally or have used in the past. Won't get into what they were used for, or at least not in this video. But anything that I vouch for on here, I can tell you does work and is sound tactically, though it requires training. Anything that I show you is going to require training. You can't just pick up the best gear in the world and expect to be, some super spy, amazing G.I. Joe man. Doesn't quite work that way. So, to get elaborate as far as knives and daggers and stuff like that goes, please head over to my brother Nathan Reynolds' channel. Watch his series, The Way of the Blade, because he goes a bit more in depth than I'm going to be able to today, as far as the different types of knives, functionalities, and things like that. I said I will put the link in the description below. That way you can follow the link and get on his stuff. Good stuff. I wouldn't lead you astray. If it wasn't worth watching, I wouldn't mention it. Nathan has a past almost identical to mine. He knows what he's talking about. All right, so do me a favor, do him a favor, head over, check it out. All right, okay. Now, having said that, let us begin. Okay, first thing that you have to understand, blades were not originally created to be flashy. You do have some that are meant for intimidation purposes, and you can do tricks with them and stuff like the balisong, or better known as the butterfly knife, and things like that, which I do own a few. It's a hobby of mine. I love those knives. Good to practice with, but as far as anything beyond being intimidating goes, all this, you're wasting your time. Okay, this is not the Renaissance, ergo, you're not going to be walking around with a saber or a rapier on your hilt. Sorry guys, those days might come back eventually, not right now. The same is going to be said for arming swords and broadswords. Same will even be said to a certain degree about katanas and things like that, although they are a bit more tactically sound than the others. Although we'll cover that towards the end of this video. Okay, so having said that, establish rule. Rule number 1, know your blade, know its purposes. Okay, I said my blades, the way that I do it on everyday carry situations, which is what we're going to discuss first. Everyday carry, all right? My blades are meant to be concealed. I don't want anyone knowing that I'm having them, okay? Reason being for that, I'm not trying to intimidate you. If you are a threat and there's things that I have to do, then it's far better that you not know what's coming until it's too late. I don't want you being able to counteract my movements. I don't want you even catching a whiff or a hint that you're about to be in a situation where you're bleeding out and you're going to need an ambulance. I went a little too deep there. Pun intended. All right. So, having said that, my EDC, there's a few knives that I use for that. Okay. One of my favorites is my pocket knife that I carry with me almost everywhere. I affectionately refer to it as my John Wick knife. And this is actually made by Vipertech. Yes, I have parts of it right now. That's because I'm re-cerakoting it. You know, I just want a new protective layer on it. You know, as much as I wear it in my pocket, it gets wore down pretty quick. So, as I said, Vipertech. This is part of their Ghost series. It is about a 4-inch blade, double-edged, made out of D2 steel, and it is a wonderful, wonderful piece of equipment to have. One of my favorites in my collection, by far. OTF knives are great, not just for concealment, because I actually have 2 of these. I also have a mini, which is even smaller than this one, and no one's going to know unless I want them to. But on my EDC, apart from my firearm and my spare magazines, this is usually what I'm carrying. I always carry it on my left side. Reason being for that, if I am jumped and someone is trying to get my firearm, I want my right hand free to prevent them from taking my gun, while my left hand is free to work my blade and stop what it is they're attempting to accomplish. Okay. Another wonderful thing about this blade, you know, apart from the strength and everything else from it, how quick it's able to be deployed. This thing is razor sharp. I mean, this thing is scary sharp. Eventually I'll do a video on how you guys can get them to be super scary sharp. But a dull blade's not worth anything, so yeah. Learn to sharpen your knives, ladies and gentlemen. This is one of the sharpest ones I've had. Believe it or not, I have had accidents with this one. One day I was actually sharpening it, and one of my dogs jumped on me, and I dropped the knife, and it went down straight into the top of my leg and buried the blade about that deep in it with little to no pressure whatsoever. I mean, it was only about 4 inches away from my leg when it fell. Yeah, so, yeah, scary sharp. And that's what these style blades are meant for. These are meant for stabbing. You know, stabby, stabby, stab, stab, stab. That's what daggers are meant for. They're meant to go deep, they're meant to penetrate, and they're meant to disrupt blood flow and cause bleeding out. That is the entire purpose. Okay, next up on my EDC list. Sorry, dogs come in here to harass me. Alright, next up on my EDC list is one of my all-time favorites. This one I got when the company first came out, before they were doing mass production or anything else. You know, I got this one. It was one of the first ones. It was handmade and actually shipped here. I waited like a month for it to come in. And this is a Mazzalong Karambit. Now, the reason why this is my other EDC is because it's quaint, it's small, it's concealable. Yet if you are familiar with these types of blades and what they do, it is a devastating piece of equipment. Now, this one's only single edged. You know, as you can see right here. It's got a flat back on it. Alright. That is because this one is made for concealment. Very quick to deploy. Comes with a Kydex style holster. Quick mounting. Just put on your belt loop, you're good to go. And it is very quick to deploy. By the time I've drawn this and done my damage, you'll never have known what hit you. You won't realize that I've even moved and drawn this until it's too late. That is the reason why this is part of my EDC collection. Like I said, usually it's going to be my OTF from Vipertech. However, this is my other favorite. And this one also has a slightly bigger brother that I use that a friend of mine actually sent me while he was doing training for Kali over in the Philippines. This is the same brand. This is also Mazzalon. This is their double-edged, partially serrated karambit. And this is one of my absolute favorites. This is actually, I have carried this on occasion as an EDC. However, this one usually stays on my duty belt, on my tactical belt. Reason being is because here in the state of Tennessee, I'm allowed to carry whatever style blade I want to on my person, and it's 100% legal. I could actually walk around the state with a katana strapped to my back, or a broadsword, or a bastard sword for that matter, and nobody would say a thing, not even law enforcement, because it is illegal. Or, I'm sorry, legal. Well, they probably would say something these days, but it wouldn't be because of the sword, it would be because I was violating quarantine procedures or something stupid. Anyways, karambits are a very devastating type weapon. When originally designed, they were modeled after a tiger's claw. As you can see, you push forward on it, it's just like a tiger's claw, retractable. Goes out, comes back in. These were actually meant as a last defense type weapon, where, once you're out of ammo, you're out of other things, this would be your go-to at that point once it's close quarter. And these things are brutal. As you can see by the way I'm holding this, when I'm holding it with a flat fist, the blade protrudes, right? So I can stab just by punching and striking. I can slash. I can put in and actually use the hook to manipulate your body parts and control your movements. I can put it on and actually grab you by the back of the neck with it, pull you down. I can control you any way I want to with this blade. Or I can be one of the fastest things you've ever seen, and you will never know what hit you. You're going to feel the burn, the cut, and then you're going to be lying on the floor. It's that quick, it's that lethal, it's that deadly. These are not meant for flash, these are not meant for show. Yes, I could show off with it. I train with these things regularly. This is actually one of my favorite go-to blades for any sort of combat situation. However, I will not do that to you because most of you have never held one of these, much less trained with them. So I don't want to get you drooling and salivating over something that's going to require you some serious investment as far as time and energy goes in learning how to use it. However, we will do some videos on some basic manipulation and stuff like that. I'm just waiting on a couple of my new dummy karambits to come in so I can train you safely and not make a victim out of my partner, Caleb. This will be fun, trust me. They're coming. Okay. Alright, let's move on. Oh, wait, no. I do have another blade that I have carried. I've carried this one for years. This one is handmade. Nathan, if you're watching, you know the story behind this one. We talked about it briefly. This is the one I was telling you about that one of them that my father had forged. You know the purpose. But it's this one. Now these blades of this particular design are great. I actually love them. Fits my hand perfectly. Due to that groove, that notch right there, I don't have to worry about my hand slipping up over the blade and me actually losing any fingers over it. This one is super duper scary. Give you nightmares sharp. And typically this style blade, you see people use it for skinning, and it is wonderful for skinning. If you're a hunter, you know the power of these blades, and you love them as much as I do. However, these are greatly effective in combat as well, and they're not a bad addition to have. I mean, they're a tool. You can use them for multiple things. You can use them from everything from, shaping wood and making punji sticks to like. Okay, that's another video. But Yes, you know what I'm saying. To whittling, to skinning, to doing several type things. Uh, it's a great tool to have, something that's wonderful to have in your collection. So if this particular design tickles your fancy, hey, go for it. Just make sure you get a good one that's quality steel. All right. Uh, there's all types of high carbon steel blades out there: 1095, 1060, D2, D. God, I could spend all day naming different types of alloys. Trust me. Just make sure you get a quality blade that's made of good steel. You don't want stainless. You don't want cheap China-made knockoff garbage because one, it's not going to hold an edge. Two, it's going to be very brittle. Okay, so get good quality solid steel. All right. Decently high carbon content is going to be good. However, you're going to have to spend a little bit of extra time cleaning the blade and keeping it oiled. That way it doesn't rust. All right. Stainless steel is great at not rusting. However, the blades have a tendency not to hold an edge all that wonderfully and to be brittle, or at least more so brittle than a high carbon steel. All right, so what you want is something in a good mix range. Like I said, I like D2 steels. I also like surgical steels. I also like things that are forged in combination, different types of steels mixed together, like good Damascus steel. I love that. So you know what? We're going to get into the next stuff. Okay, next up we're going to do combat knives, things that I actually keep on my person. We've already discussed my karambit, and that is usually my go-to, but that one on my duty belt stays on my left side. The blade that is on my right side and is actually mounted to my holster, that holster right there, the holster for my SIG P320, is going to be my Spartan Blades USA trench dagger. I'll let you look at that right there. Yep, there you go, Spartan Blades. These are the type of knives and things that I was trained with from a young age, and was always given to use for nefarious purposes. We'll leave it at that. These things are very effective. You know, there's a reason why assassins love daggers. Look at the way that thing's made. Look at that point. Look at the length of that blade. You get deep penetration out of this. I mean, if you strike someone in the armpit, the side, back, you know, about fifth, fourth lumbar down, this blade's deep enough that it is going to penetrate vital organs and veins, and it's not going to be a pretty picture afterwards. I said, assassins through the centuries use daggers and love these things because of how effective they are at killing. That's one of the reasons why, you know, World War I, World War II, you had trench daggers like this. They wanted knives that were effective, you know, things that would kill the enemy. Now, due to some of the construction methods and stuff like that, they had problems with the blades breaking back then. However, I can say that Spartan Blades USA has done a wonderful job in refining this process, and this is one of the sturdiest blades I own, and it's a great dagger. A friend of mine gave this to me. I'm not going to lie to you, Spartan Blades is on the expensive side. This dagger right here is about $400. So, not for the faint of heart. If you can't afford that, I understand. If you'd rather use that to buy a gun, I understand. I'm not telling you to go out and buy $400 blades. However, if you want superior quality, you're going to pay a superior price. That's unfortunately just the way that is. Alright, next up in our combat selection is going to be my SOG, Seal Pup. Or, well, not Seal Pup, it's actually a Seal issue. This is not the ones that you see in the stores now. I'm going to go ahead and put that disclaimer up here right now. Alright? The ones that you see in the store now are cheap China-made knockoffs of what SOG originally was. It's been bought and sold several different times. This is another one that is super scary, razor sharp. Uh, excuse me. They've been made in the USA, they've been made in Japan, and now they're made in China. Yeah. Not saying all the blades that come from China are bad, but I don't trust SOG since they've been made in China. I don't. I'm sorry. This one is almost as old as I am. I actually got this from one of my grandfather's friends, who was in fact a SEAL. And this was one of his favorite knives. I got this when I was about 7 years old. And this is one of the real ones. This one is actually made, I know you probably can't see that right there, but it is Seki, Japan, is where this particular blade was forged at. And this is a wonderful piece of craftsmanship. It's one of the strongest blades I have in my collection. I have used this to pry car doors and all kinds of things open, and it has not bent, it has not broken. This is a marvelous thing right here. Great for combat. As you can see, you have an upswept blade, razor sharp, the drop point, and it's great for slicing and cutting, which is what this particular style was made for. That curve in the blade makes it particularly good as far as cutting goes. You see that with like chef's knives and things like that. You always see that little bit of curve in the blade right there. That is because it is meant for cutting. It is meant for slicing. These are wonderful for that, which makes them great for offensive combat and even defensive combat to a certain degree, if you know how to use them properly. But yes, if you're going to buy SOG, try and find one of the originals, one of the good ones. If all you can get is one of the newer China-made ones, it's not going to kill you. However, I have my own personal preferences. I just generally don't trust most Chinese still unless I know the people that are making it and the company producing it personally. You know, it is what it is. All right. Now then, next up, let me do something real quick. All right, next up, we are going to go with my other favorite combat knife that is in my collection. Now, this particular one, it's not very expensive, which makes it wonderful, okay? It really does. So this is one you can get for a decent budget, you know, probably $50, I'm guessing. But it's actually a very well-made blade. Trust me, I should know. I've put mine through all kinds of rigorous torture, and it is still surviving. This is the Smith & Wesson Homeland Defense, or I'm sorry, Homeland Security series. Now, they make it in different styles. They do make it in your standard combat knife style, which is always good. This one is actually one of my favorite styles because this is a Tanto blade. This is meant for stabbing and lacerations. If you will take note, this actually has a very similar style tip to this. That is where the Tanto style blade comes from. It's actually modeled after the Japanese Ninjato, which was sword ninjas were rumored to actually use as opposed to katanas, but we're not going to get into theory and history right now. We're just going to get into why this blade is awesome. This is made from high-grade titanium and surgical steel. It's nice and thick, a little weighty, a little hefty, so it's got some weight behind it. But as far as combat goes, this thing will lay people open and penetrate very, very deep as far as stabs go, and it's partially serrated. You know, and the thickness and heft of the blade means that it's sturdy and is going to last a good long time, which is wonderful. That's what you want out of a blade. You want to know that you can put this thing through prying doors open and cutting, you know, aluminum fencing and things like that, and know that this blade is going to survive. This thing holds an edge remarkably well. And like I said, this is one of my favorite ones in my collection. It really is. And this is one of those examples I was trying to give you. Technically, since it's Smith & Wesson, this is made in China. This is Chinese still. You know what I mean? It just is. It is Chinese still. However, this is one of the rare exceptions where they got it right and did a really good job with it. So, yeah, you should check these out. Smith & Wesson Homeland Security Series. They will last. They will endure. They're not half bad for the money. So, yeah. Worth looking into. And I have carried this into the field with me before. As a matter of fact, it usually stays connected to the small of my back and has been very, very useful. Okay, next up we're going to get into things that I have actually used and have been placed on my bug out bag at different periods of time. Let's get things squared away right off the bat though, alright? I have multiple tactical bags for multiple different purposes. I have a field kit, which is what I actually carry in with me when we're doing operations, and that is what attaches to my vest, for example. And there are various other attachments that I have carried into the field and will carry into the field. It all depends on the situation. I also have bug out bags that are meant for deep woods type survival situations. I have a get home bag that stays in my car. And I also have a premium type bug out bag that is meant to cover both me and my wife should a certain situation happen and we have to flee in a hurry. Now, different bags require different things. For example, the bag that I keep for the woods, I wouldn't be much of a sound-minded person if I didn't have a good machete. This is actually one of my favorite blades that I have, and it's not even the most expensive, which is crazy, right? This is actually a hand-forged blade. Came from a company in China. I've ordered stuff from them before. The fact that it's hand-forged is the only reason why I even splurged on this thing. I got it originally just to test it out to see if it was going to be worth anything, because a buddy was asking me what I thought of it before he went out and invested in one, and I have to say, I have been thoroughly impressed. Very thoroughly impressed. It's called a Jungle Master, and it is a kukri machete hybrid. You've seen similar style blades on like the movie The Book of Eli. That'd be a good one, good example. Very similar style blade to that. It's meant to have forward momentum, so most of the weight is going to be up here in the forward part of the blade where the heft is. That is to assist you with your swing. However, it is also light enough that I can manipulate it rather easily. So it's actually decently balanced for what it is. So, yes. Decently inexpensive. Well worth the investment. Keep it clean. Keep it sharp. Take care of it. Great for hiking situations or deep woods. Things of that nature. And, hey, it's a machete, so something comes down to it and you have to use it as a defensive weapon, you've got reach. Nothing wrong with that. Okay, now then. What I have attached to my actual get home bag, the one that actually stays in my car, and stays in my car pretty regularly, especially when I go to work and things like that, is actually going to be a hatchet, a tomahawk. Now, this one isn't anything particularly special. I mean, it's United Cutlery. A lot of their stuff is decent. It's not bad. I've actually been rather impressed with this one. For something that doesn't have a tang that runs the full length of the handle, it's actually pretty solid. I've been brutally testing it for about 4 months now. I picked this one up because it was on clearance at one point, and I wanted to see just how much crap I could put it through before something shattered or broke or anything like that. And surprisingly enough, this thing has held up extremely well, which has earned it a spot on my Get Home bag. Now, the reason why I would have this on my Get Home bag as opposed to my bug out bag for, like, say, woods or anything like that, even though it can be used for it, is because, one, it's lightweight, it's versatile, and can be used in a couple of different ways, including rescue type situations, for bashing indoors and things of that nature. And that is the reason why I keep it as far as part of my Get Home bag goes. Now, eventually I will probably actually leather wrap and braid the handle on it, just because I do stuff like that, because I like having a solid structure, knowing that it's not going to give out anytime soon, and I also like having extra grip. I do that with a lot of my weapons, actually. So, yeah, for the money, these are not bad, and I do recommend them. Like I said, there's a reason it actually made it to its own personal spot on my Get Home bag that stays in my car. So, yeah, good stuff. And believe it or not, these things actually hold an edge really well as far as what you'd expect from a tomahawk or an axe. I mean, it's pretty impressive type of edge you can get on this thing. You can actually make one of these dangerously scary sharp. Super scary sharp. I mean, I have used this thing right here and whack down tree limbs, about yay thick with one swipe. Now, granted, I had to go and sharpen it again, after doing that a couple of times, but it held an edge better than I thought it was going to. Most sheep-made axes, you put them through that, and it dulls off the first time. This one, I went through 4, 5, 6, maybe 7 different strikes on some really heavy type things before I even had to consider any form of resharpening on it. And it didn't get just extremely dull to the extent that it wasn't useful either. It still had an edge on it. It just wasn't as awesome as the previous edge I had put on there. So yeah, great deal for the money. Not half bad. Now, yeah, there's better ones out there, but you're going to pay a heftier price for it too. You can go the extra, mile and go get one of the handmade, hand-forged Damascus steel ones that I've seen roaming about, and I wouldn't knock you for 1 second for doing it, because those things are impressive depending upon who the smith is. But if you're going to do hand-forged and stuff like that, you want to know who your smith is going to be and what type of skills and experience they have. Last thing you want is to get an axe or a machete or a blade of some kind that has a cold shot that runs through it, and the thing breaks the first time you use it. So research your smiths before you order from them. Okay. Now, I have had several questions as far as tactical type swords go. I'm going to be honest with you. Swords are kind of personal preference. They really are. There have been some that I have used, tactically speaking. Of course, I have also been trained on several different styles. So I have my personal preferences. As far as swords go, if you are a newbie and you're looking for something that you can kind of figure out how to use off the fly once you pick it up, and it isn't going to require just too much training for you to be able to use it somewhat functionally, I would recommend the katana. Reason being is because European swords are normally double-edged. The arming sword would be a prime example of that. It's a one-handed blade, and it's a beautiful blade. Don't get me wrong, this one's actually made by Cold Steel. It's one of their hand-forged, and I really love this sword. This is one of my personal, gimme-gimmes. This thing is a brutal hacker and slasher. I've put this thing through rigorous amounts of testing, and it holds its own very well. However, due to it being double-edged and things like that, and a single-handed weapon, it's going to require more training for your body to get accustomed to it and for you to be able to use it effectively than, let's say, a two-handed blade would. Now, the reason why I wouldn't recommend you up the ante and go with a bastard sword or something as far as tactically minded goes, is because the length of them, and like I said, you want the appropriate blade for the appropriate job. It is what it is. Bastard swords and stuff are going to require a lot of training. I mean, that's the way it is. Even proper use of katana requires a lot of training in Aido and various other things. It requires practice if you're seeking perfection. However, if you wanted something that is tactically viable, that can be used as a defensive/offensive weapon in the right time, then I would recommend starting off with a katana. I love katanas. Do not get me wrong. However, when it comes to my tactical stuff, I do not carry a katana on me, simply because, well, on the specific situations, I do not carry a katana on me because of the length of the blade. A lot of the situations I find myself in are urban type environments, close quarter combat, that kind of thing. And in that type of a situation where reach is not necessarily, or reach is a good thing on a blade, you also need speed, precision, and accuracy. You don't want to have a blade that is 28 inches long. Sometimes they can go up to 30, 32, depending upon the style. In a close quarter combat type situation, like in a room this size, I would not be able to wield this thing proficiently and actually be able to do what I want to my opponent, because every time I swung it, I would have to measure and calculate how much room I have in here, because by me swinging this thing full force, if I cut into a wall or hit something metal like a door frame or something like that, then one, my blade could get stuck. Two, it could damage the blade and diminish its usefulness in the situation. So, close quarter combat type scenarios, I would not use a katana. There are a few other options though. You have odachis, or is it nodachi? It's one of the two. It's a short form of a katana. They're usually 4 or 5 inches shorter, roughly, as far as blade length goes. As a matter of fact, I have one right here. This is made by the same company that made that last one. It's Ronin Katana. Their stuff is all hand-forged by amazing swordsmiths, and they have amazing quality. But, as you can see, this blade, give me a second, I'll show you. Is actually a couple inches shorter than your standard katana is. Reason being is this is designed similar to a ninjato and is made for close quarter combat. The way this one's made, the way it's designed, I know you're looking at the handle, right? Ridiculously wrong. Wrong. I think I'm turning Japanese. The reason for this is so you can have different angle points, different grip points on the handle to be able to generate power in your swing. Which is a wonderful thing to have, because these, much like the chef's knife, much like Bowie knife, things like that, that curve, these were made for slashing and cutting. You can stab with them. They do have a very sharp point on the end, for stabby, and they're great for that. However, these are made more precisely for cutting and slashing, which makes them a great defensive and offensive weapon. I can do exuberant amounts of damage to an individual with one of these. I mean, to the point that it's ridiculous. Even the cheaper made katanas like Musashi brand and stuff like that, where you can get them for $79 to $115 roughly, they will do some major damage. There was a case reported last year, an elderly man some thugs broke into their home and took him and his wife, and they made the mistake of walking past his sword display, and he picked up a cheap display katana and went to town on them, and the pictures of what he did to them was brutal. Extremely brutal. Cops found him in their car bleeding out 45 minutes or an hour later, and they were almost dead. I mean, the photos of the injuries were just insane. Anyways, like I said, that one's your next step down. It's the blade and stuff. It's only a couple inches shorter. All right, than your standard katana. Yet, as far as close quarter combat goes, I would resort to that before I would the actual katana. My personal preference as far as urban environment goes, if I'm going to pack any sort of a sword or something, is actually going to be a wakizashi, which is the Japanese short sword. This one is made by Hanwei? I think that's the name of the company. This is a discontinued series. It's hand forged, razor sharp, extremely light. It's made out of high carbon spring steel, which makes it extremely flexible, yet extremely tough and strong, and very lightweight. You know, so you have your speed, you have your precision. And yes, I did the cord wrap handle myself. Like I said, I like some extra grip there. And this thing is actually a very impressive weapon. It really, truly is. Because it's lightweight and things like that, you can generate these and generate a decent amount of power just one-handed with this. However, the way that they designed the grip, I can do two hands, and I can go even harder into it. And that's one of the things I love about this. And the way that it is designed, it is lightweight enough that I can keep this on my gear and on my person. I could even carry two of these if I wanted to. And it's not going to weigh down my equipment. And they're also going to be feasible in a close quarter combat type of environment because of the length of the blade. And they're going to be very effective. The blade, a blade this size, I can actually conceal. Now, granted, it'd take me a little bit of doing, but I could conceal this type of blade until the moment I was ready to strike much easier than I can the katana or even the Nodachi, the one that I just showed you. And there are different styles of wakizashis as well that come in different lengths. For comparison, see that? Yep, there you go. Quite a bit of difference there. 6-7 inches almost. Alright, like I said, there's different styles and different lengths and things like that. I'm actually in the process of forging one myself. When it's done, I'll show that one off to you guys eventually. But it's a process, so it takes a while. However, this one is also a very good substitute. This one is made by Honshu. Again, you can get it from Bud K. Like I said, I'm not going to say this is the greatest thing in the world because as far as swords and stuff go, personally, I prefer hand-forged as opposed to machine stamped or cut, which technically is what this one would be considered. However, this is not a bad blade by any means. It's actually very sturdy. It's high carbon steel. I can't remember what. I can't remember. It's 1095, 1060. Either way, it's through hardened, high carbon steel. It's got a bit of heft, a bit of weight to it, so you could actually get some good force with it. The way the handle's designed, you know, it's got the recurve right here for your hand, you know, which is actually pretty good, really comfortable handle actually. Really well-balanced sword, and I put this thing through some really brutal testing. Now, I'm going to go ahead and tell you, you're not going to find a blade that looks like this flat out. I actually stained this blade using Jack's steel blackener, the acid stuff they produce. That is what I used to blacken this blade with, and it was a process. But it was well worth it, because if you're going to have a blade, why not have a black blade, right? If it's nighttime, they're not going to see it coming. How do you block what you can't see? And this is actually one of my favorites. This has gone with me into the field before, and I would not hesitate of taking it again, simply because it's actually a pretty dependable blade. You can get one of these for about 120, 130, roughly. Might be able to get one cheaper since they've been out for a while. I'm not 100% sure. I haven't looked into it since I bought this one. But after having it for a few years and doing some extremely brutal type testing on it, I can vouch for this particular blade and this company. They have done a very good job with this, and this thing is well worth the money that you pay for it. So, alright, having said that, that is where we are going to end our video today, okay? Remember, personal blades are meant for concealment. You want them to feel it before they ever see it. That's the entire purpose. You know, that is the way of the blade, alright? Now, like I said, you guys have a good one. Stay sharp. Go visit Nathan Reynolds, alright? Check out his series, The Way of the Blade, okay? And then on top of that, there's a few other videos of his you need to check out too, especially his new series, Becoming a Gibberim. I'm sure I'm pronouncing that wrong. Anyways, it's because I'm tired and I haven't slept in about 24 hours. Anyways, you guys have a good one. Stay safe. Stay vigilant. Watch your six. Protect your family. I'll see you on the next one.